Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Do you still remember the stars whose laughter once filled our screens? Whose presence once lit up every scene they touched? In today's video, we are stepping into one of Hollywood's most haunting corridors, where fame fades, the cameras stop rolling, and a trailer becomes the final place they ever breathed. These are 15 actors who died alone between takes, their last moments unfolding in silence just a few feet away from the world that adored them. Some passed in the middle of filming. Some drifted away quietly in the trailers they called home. Others collapsed only steps from the set where they had given everything. Each story carries a chilling reminder of how quickly the spotlight can burn out. Do you remember any of these stars? Leave a comment below sharing the memory that comes to your mind. Number 1. John Candy. Ladies and gentlemen, our first story begins on a quiet night in Durango, Mexico, where the desert air hung still around the film set of Wagons East. Inside his trailer, away from the noise of production and the pressure of another long shooting day, John Candy took his final breath. It was March of 1994, and the crew expected him to step out for the next scene. Instead, they found him motionless, the silence inside that small room heavier than any script he had ever carried. His death was sudden, a heart attack that struck without warning. Hollywood was stunned. Just hours before, he had shared jokes with the crew, easing tension the way he always did. The shock came not only from the tragedy itself, but from the cruel contrast between the warmth he brought to the world and the cold, lonely space in which his life ended. A trailer, meant only as a temporary refuge, became the final chapter of a man who dedicated his life to bringing joy. John Candy, born in 1950, was more than a comedian. He was a symbol of innocence wrapped inside humor, a performer who made audiences feel safe even when he played the fool. From Uncle Buck to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, he carved out a legacy that blended vulnerability with humor in a way only he could. His characters were flawed, tender, human, and so was he. When news spread, tributes poured in from every corner of the industry. Steve Martin called him a genuine soul. Fans gathered at theaters, watching his films again, not just to laugh, but to feel a connection with the man they lost. Many wondered whether the pressure of constant filming, long schedules, and the emotional weight of being Hollywood's gentle giant had slowly eroded his health. What do you think about those final hours? Do you believe Hollywood ever understood the burden he carried behind that smile? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And now, as we leave John Candy's silent trailer behind, we move to another star whose final moments inside a similar space shocked the entertainment world for entirely different reasons: the tragic, controversial death of Clark Gable III. Number 2. Clark Gable III. Ladies and gentlemen, our next story unfolds inside a small production trailer in Dallas, Texas, one that belonged to Clark Gable III, the grandson of Hollywood royalty. It was February of 2019 when the crew of the television show Cheaters noticed something unsettling. Their host, a young man carrying one of the most legendary names in film history, had not emerged from his trailer that morning. When they finally opened the door, the scene inside was chillingly quiet. Clark lay unresponsive, the stillness of that cramped room a brutal contrast to the chaos of reality television waiting outside. Paramedics rushed in, but the truth was immediate. He was already gone. The medical examiner would later confirm what many feared. His death was caused by an accidental overdose involving fentanyl, oxycodone, and alprazolam, a lethal trio, one that has stolen far too many young lives. And here it had taken the heir to the Gable legacy, a man born with fame embedded in his name, but not necessarily in his fate. Clark Gable III, born in 1988, carried a burden few could ever comprehend. Being the grandson of the King of Hollywood brought both privilege and pressure. He worked as an actor, model, and later as the host of Cheaters, trying to carve out an identity separate from the towering silhouette of his grandfather. Those who knew him described him as charismatic, driven, and eager to prove he was more than a last name. But the entertainment world can be unforgiving, especially to those navigating fame's shadow rather than its center. Friends said he struggled quietly, balancing ambition with the weight of expectations he never asked for. His passing inside that lonely trailer became a symbol, not of his failures, but of how Hollywood often overlooks the battles waged behind closed doors. When the news broke, social media erupted. Fans of the Gable dynasty mourned the loss of a young man they barely had the chance to know. Many asked the same heartbreaking question: could this tragedy have been prevented? What do you think, dear viewers? Do you believe the pressure of legacy played a role in his downfall? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As we step away from the Gable family's sorrowful chapter, we move toward an even darker tale. One involving addiction, despair, and a life cut tragically short inside a trailer meant only for temporary shelter. It is the story of Glenn Quinn. Number 3. Glenn Quinn. Ladies and gentlemen, our next story takes us to a modest trailer parked behind a relative's home in North Hollywood. It was December of 2002 when Glenn Quinn, once a rising star with a devoted fan base, spent his final night in that small, dimly lit space. By morning, he would be found lifeless, the victim of a heroin overdose. The discovery was quiet, heartbreaking, and tragically familiar in a town where broken dreams often end in silence. Glenn Quinn, born in 1970, was best known to audiences for his roles in Roseanne and Angel. On Roseanne, he played the lovable Mark Healy, a character whose rough edges masked a soft heart. But it was his role as the half-demon Doyle in Angel that cemented him as a cult favorite. Fans adored him. They saw in him a spark, intensity, charm, a certain woundedness that felt real. And perhaps that was the problem. Behind the scenes, Glenn was fighting a years-long battle with addiction, one that gradually consumed his career, his relationships, and finally, his life. Friends spoke later about how he had bounced between recovery and relapse, determined one day and defeated the next. The entertainment industry, fast-moving and unforgiving, slowly slipped out of his reach. Roles dried up, opportunities faded, and the trailer, where he spent his final days, became both a refuge and a trap. When news of his death broke, the reaction was immediate and emotional. Fans of Angel flooded forums with tributes, many recalling Doyle's heroic final scene with a new, heartbreaking perspective. Castmates expressed their grief, remembering Glenn not just as a talented performer, but as a gentle soul who was never able to outrun his demons. His passing became a stark reminder of addiction's grip and how fame offers no protection against despair. What do you think, dear viewers? Could Hollywood have done more to save someone so clearly struggling? Or was Glenn a casualty of battles he faced long before the cameras ever rolled? Share your thoughts in the comments. As we leave Glenn Quinn's tragic trailer behind, our next story follows an actress whose life began with brilliance, success, and promise, yet ended in another quiet space behind her home, where a young star faded far too soon. This is the story of Skye McCall Bartusiak. Number 4. Skye McCall Bartusiak. Ladies and gentlemen, our next tragedy unfolds not in a Hollywood studio lot, but in a small cabin-style trailer behind a quiet home in Texas. It was July of 2014 when Skye McCall Bartusiak, once one of the most promising child actors of her generation, was found unresponsive inside that tiny structure. At just 22 years old, her life ended alone in a place meant only for rest and privacy. The medical examiner later confirmed the cause, an accidental overdose involving prescription medication and inhalants. A devastating end for a young woman who had once commanded the screen with astonishing emotional depth. Born in 1992, Skye captured hearts worldwide in The Patriot, playing the daughter of Mel Gibson in a performance so authentic that audiences wept for her. She went on to appear in television shows, independent films, and stage productions, showing a talent far beyond her years. Critics described her as luminous, instinctive, and one of the rare child actors whose emotional intelligence seemed innate. But behind the scenes, Skye struggled with seizures, anxiety, and the transition from childhood fame into adulthood, one of Hollywood's most dangerous crossroads. Friends said she battled insomnia and panic attacks, symptoms that led her to medications which eventually played a role in her death. Her mother was the one who found her in the trailer that morning, a moment so heartbreaking that it shook the entertainment world to its core. Public reaction was immediate and sorrowful. Fans remembered her innocence, her expressive eyes, her quiet power on screen. Former co-stars shared tributes filled with disbelief, saying she was warm, gentle, and full of life just days before. Many questioned whether Hollywood had done enough to support a young woman coping with adult pressures before she was even old enough to fully understand them. What about you, dear viewers? Do you think the entertainment industry asks too much of its youngest talents? And could Skye's story have been different if she had been given more time, more space, and more protection? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. As we step away from Skye's silent cabin trailer, another story awaits, one involving a former child star who fought his way into adulthood, only to lose that battle inside another lonely trailer meant for healing. This is the tragic final chapter of Blake Herron. Number 5. Blake Herron. Ladies and gentlemen, our next story unfolds inside a rehab trailer in La Crescenta, California. It was September of 2017 when Blake Herron, once a bright young talent with a future full of promise, was found unresponsive in the very place meant to save him. Paramedics arrived quickly, but the truth was undeniable. At only 35 years old, Blake died alone inside that narrow space, the victim of a lethal blend of fentanyl and complications linked to withdrawal. The tragedy was not just in how he died, but in how desperately he had been trying to save himself. Born in 1982, Blake rose to fame as the lead in the family hit Shiloh, where he played a troubled boy whose bond with a beagle touched millions. Critics called him soulful, intuitive, and remarkably mature for his age. He later appeared in We Were Soldiers and numerous television roles, always bringing a grounded, emotional sincerity to his performances. But behind his steady on-screen presence, Blake was fighting a battle that so many young actors face: addiction. He had entered rehab multiple times, trying to break free from the grip that had haunted him for years. Friends said he was hopeful in his final weeks, determined to reclaim his life and rebuild a career he feared he had already lost. That rehab trailer symbolized a turning point, a temporary home on a path toward recovery. Instead, it became the place where his struggle ended. When news of his death broke, grief rippled through Hollywood. Fans of Shiloh, many of whom grew up with his films, shared memories of watching him as children, stunned that a face associated with innocence and resilience had fallen in such a heartbreaking way. His mother spoke publicly about the dangers of addiction, pleading for better support systems for those seeking help. What about you, dear viewers? Do you believe the industry provides enough resources for actors battling addiction, or are too many left to fight alone? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And now, as we leave Blake Herron's rehab trailer behind, we move into another story, one where fame, longevity, and grief collided in a quiet motorhome that became the final refuge of a daytime television icon. This is the story of Christophe St. John. Number 6. Christophe St. John. Ladies and gentlemen, our next story takes us into a quiet motorhome parked outside a modest apartment complex in the San Fernando Valley. It was February of 2019 when Christophe St. John, one of daytime television's most recognizable faces, spent his final evening alone in that space. The next day, police found him unresponsive, and the medical examiner later ruled his death the result of hypertrophic heart disease with alcohol contributing. A career that had spanned decades ended not on a studio stage, but in the muted stillness of a motorhome, far from the bright lights he had known for most of his life. Christophe St. John, born in 1966, was best known for his groundbreaking role as Neil Winters on The Young and the Restless, a character he embodied for nearly 3 decades. He became a fixture of daytime drama, winning awards, shaping storylines, and becoming a familiar, comforting presence for millions of viewers. His performances carried warmth, gravity, and an authenticity that made audiences feel as though they knew him personally. But behind the steady success was a man who had endured profound grief. In 2014, Christophe's son Julian died by suicide, a tragedy that shattered him. Friends and colleagues noticed the change. Though he continued working, the emotional wound ran deep, and the weight of that loss followed him everywhere, even into the small motorhome where he spent many of his nights. When news of his death broke, the entertainment world was devastated. Co-stars from The Young and the Restless spoke of him with reverence, describing him as a gentle man with a generous heart. The show later aired a tribute episode, a rare honor that reflected just how deeply he was loved by colleagues and fans alike. For many viewers, his passing felt like losing a member of the family. What about you, dear viewers? Do you believe that prolonged grief can silently dismantle even the strongest souls, especially in an industry that rarely slows down to let its performers heal? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. As we step away from Christophe St. John's lonely motorhome, our journey leads us to another performer whose final days unfolded inside the trailer he called home. A veteran character actor whose presence once lit up the screen, yet whose final chapter was written in quiet isolation. This is the story of Michael J. Pollard.
Number 7. Michael J. Pollard. Ladies and gentlemen, our next story takes us to a modest trailer where a Hollywood legend spent his final years far removed from the spotlight that once defined him. It was November of 2019 when Michael J. Pollard, the unforgettable character actor with the mischievous smile and unmistakable presence, was found unresponsive inside the trailer he called home. Though the official cause of death was cardiac arrest brought on by declining health, the setting of his final moments told a deeper, more haunting story. A man who once earned an Academy Award nomination died quietly in a space far smaller than the Hollywood he helped shape. Born in 1939, Pollard carved his own path through Hollywood with roles that lingered in the imagination long after the credits rolled. His breakthrough in Bonnie and Clyde made him an icon of '60s cinema, and his distinctive energy led him into dozens of roles across film, television, and stage. Pollard was magnetic, not in the traditional leading man sense, but in a way that made audiences stop and say, "Who is that guy?" He was unforgettable, a true original. Yet, behind his quirky charm and cult following was a man who never sought glamour. Fame had touched him, but it never consumed him. As the decades passed, Pollard retreated from Hollywood's frenzy, choosing instead a quieter, almost reclusive life. His trailer became his sanctuary, a place where he could be himself without cameras, without expectations, without the constant hum of the industry. But it was also where his health began to fade, and ultimately where he drew his last breath. When news of his death broke, tributes poured in from fans, filmmakers, and actors who had studied his craft. Many spoke of his influence, describing him as a master of nuance, a performer who could steal a scene with a single glance. Social media filled with clips of his greatest moments, reminders of how deeply he had shaped American cinema, despite living far from its glittering center. What about you, dear viewers? Do you think Hollywood forgets the quiet geniuses, the ones who never chase fame but still shape the art? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And now, as we leave Michael J. Pollard's trailer and step into another story, we encounter a man whose life was filled with laughter, energy, and raw talent, yet whose final moments inside a trailer exposed the darker side of that world. This is the tragedy of Anthony A.J. Johnson.
Number 8. Anthony A. Johnson. Ladies and gentlemen, our next story takes place inside a small, cluttered trailer in Los Angeles, one that belonged to Anthony A. Johnson, the comedian and actor whose energy once electrified screens across America. It was September of 2021 when paramedics responded to a call and discovered AJ lying unconscious inside that cramped space. The medical examiner would later confirm the cause of death, a lethal combination of fentanyl and alcohol. Another life cut short, another talent lost behind a door no one opened in time. Born in 1965, A.J. Johnson rose to prominence through the 90s with roles that showcased both his comedic timing and his streetwise charisma. Audiences remember him vividly as Eazal in the cult classic Friday, a character whose frantic humor and unpredictable energy turned even the smallest scenes into unforgettable moments. He was fast, sharp, and fearless on camera, an actor who lived in the rhythm of the punchline. Yet behind the laughter was a man who carried burdens seldom seen by the public. AJ had long struggled with financial instability, the inconsistent nature of Hollywood work, and the pressure to maintain a comedic persona even when life felt heavy. Friends said he was kind, humble, and always willing to help others, but they also admitted that he often fought his battles alone. That lonely trailer, filled with personal belongings and scattered reminders of a life improvised from moment to moment, became a metaphor for the isolation he faced in his final years. When the news of his death reached the public, the reaction was immediate and raw. Fans flooded social media with lines from Friday, honoring the man whose quick wit shaped an entire generation's sense of humor. Fellow comedians mourned the loss of someone they considered a pioneer, an artist who helped define the gritty, street-level comedy that later became mainstream. The grief was compounded by frustration, as many pointed out how common it had become for actors, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, to slip through the cracks of an industry that rarely protects its own. What do you think, dear viewers? Do you believe Hollywood should do more to support its comedians, the very people who carry so much joy into the world yet often struggle behind the curtain? Share your thoughts in the comments. And now, as we close the door on A.J. Johnson's silent trailer, we turn to another life marked by quiet decline and a heartbreaking end inside a trailer home. This is the story of Chris Paulzis. Number 9. Chris Paulzis. Ladies and gentlemen, our next story drifts into the quiet outskirts of Los Angeles, where a small, personal trailer sat tucked behind a modest property. It was inside this simple space that Chris Paulzis, actor, filmmaker, and half-brother of Kelly Preston, spent his final night. In March of 2020, family members entered the trailer after he failed to respond to calls. They found him unresponsive, and emergency services could not revive him. His death was later attributed to complications from underlying health issues, a natural passing that nonetheless occurred in heartbreaking isolation. Born in 1952, Chris Paulzis never reached the towering fame of his sister, but he carved his own path in Hollywood. He acted in several television projects, produced short films, and worked behind the scenes, always striving to contribute something meaningful to the industry he loved. Those who knew him described him as warm, thoughtful, and deeply creative, someone who preferred collaboration over competition, reflection over spectacle. While his resume was modest, his impact on those around him was profound. But fame is not the only currency in Hollywood, and for many artists like Chris, the journey is a constant balancing act between craft and survival.
As years passed, life became quieter, work came less frequently, and he moved into a small trailer where he lived simply, surrounded by scripts, notes, and unfinished ideas. That trailer became both a workshop and a refuge, until the day it became the place he took his final breath. When news of his passing surfaced, it carried a soft sorrow rather than the explosive shock that accompanies celebrity tragedies. Yet those who cared for him felt the loss deeply. Kelly Preston, who herself would pass away only months later, mourned privately. Friends from the independent film community shared memories of a gentle man who offered encouragement, advice, and quiet brilliance. His death reminded many that Hollywood's unsung contributors often fade away without the recognition they deserve. What about you, dear viewers? Do you believe the industry overlooks the lesser-known artists who quietly shape its creative backbone? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As we close the door on Chris Pausas' dimly lit trailer, our story turns to a woman whose final days were spent battling illness from inside the motorhome that had become her sanctuary. This is the gentle, bittersweet final chapter of Linda Porter. Number 10. Linda Porter. Ladies and gentlemen, our next story brings us into the life of a woman whose face brought comfort, humor, and quiet warmth to millions. Linda Porter, best known for her role as Myrtle on the hit series Superstore, spent her final years living in a small motorhome that became both her refuge and her final resting place. It was September of 2019 when news broke that she had passed away inside that motorhome, her death attributed to complications from cancer. The woman who so often played characters full of heart and sincerity left this world in the stillness of a space far removed from the sets where she once lit up the screen. Born in 1933, Linda built a long and varied career across film and television. She appeared in Twin Peaks, Gilmore Girls, The House Bunny, and many other productions. But it was her late-life breakout as Myrtle on Superstore that endeared her to a new generation. Her comedic timing was sharp, her charm irresistible, and her ability to steal a scene with just one line became her signature. She represented a type of performer Hollywood rarely celebrates, the late bloomer who rises not through fame but through sheer authenticity. Behind the scenes, Linda was known as a gentle, grounded presence. She lived simply, choosing a motorhome lifestyle long before her health declined. It gave her freedom, privacy, and space to breathe, qualities often scarce in an industry built on noise and spectacle. But as her illness worsened, the motorhome became less a symbol of independence and more a place where she quietly faced her final battle. When she passed, she was alone but not forgotten. The cast of Superstore mourned her deeply. They shared tributes describing her humor, her resilience, and the laughter she brought to the set every day. Fans flooded social media with clips of her funniest scenes, transforming her passing into a celebration of the joy she had shared with the world. Though her death did not make explosive headlines, it resonated with audiences who felt they had lost someone familiar, someone who felt like a friend. What about you, dear viewers? Do you believe Hollywood values its veteran performers enough, or do too many fade away quietly despite years of dedication? Share your thoughts in the comments. As we step away from Linda Porter's humble motorhome, our journey leads us to another star whose life ended inside a home on wheels, a former child actor whose fame once burned brightly before his world unraveled. This is the final chapter of Gary Coleman.
Number 11. Gary Coleman. Ladies and gentlemen, our next story leads us into one of Hollywood's most tragic downward spirals, one that ended inside a modest mobile home far removed from the fame that once defined him. Gary Coleman, the unforgettable child star of Different Strokes, spent his final years grappling with illness, financial hardship, and emotional turmoil. On May 28, 2010, he was pronounced dead after suffering a fatal intracranial hemorrhage from a fall inside the mobile home where he lived with his wife in Utah. The tiny residence, meant to be a quiet retreat, instead became the site of a tragedy that felt unbearably heavy for fans who once saw him as the embodiment of innocence and joy. Born in 1968, Gary achieved worldwide fame as Arnold Jackson, delivering the iconic line, "What you talkin' about?" with charm that made him one of the most beloved child actors in television history. But behind the laughter, he battled lifelong kidney disease, requiring frequent medical treatments that stunted his growth and left him fragile. His childhood earnings, once estimated in the millions, were lost through mismanagement, legal battles, and exploitation. By adulthood, he was fighting not only for roles, but for dignity in an industry that often discards its young stars once the spotlight moves on. The final years of his life were marked by turmoil. Domestic disputes, public confrontations, and a sense of isolation overshadowed the hopeful charm he once radiated. His mobile home became both sanctuary and cage, a place where he sought privacy, yet a stark reminder of how far he had fallen from his early glory. On the day of his fatal fall, he was already weakened by illness. The accident triggered a cascade of medical complications that ultimately took his life at just 42 years old. When news of his death broke, the world reacted with shock and grief. Fans remembered the bright-eyed child who had once brought laughter to millions. Fellow actors mourned a colleague whose gifts were extraordinary, yet whose life never recovered from the pressures of fame. The tragedy sparked renewed conversations about how Hollywood protects or fails to protect its child stars. What about you, dear viewers? Do you believe Gary Coleman's downfall was avoidable, or was he a victim of an industry that consumed him too early? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As we step away from Gary Coleman's sorrowful final chapter, we move toward another star, a man whose career was soaring until a disaster left him dying near a backstage trailer. This is the heartbreaking story of Troy Gentry.
Number 12. Troy Gentry. Ladies and gentlemen, our next story shifts from the quiet solitude of a home trailer to the chaotic aftermath of a disaster. On September 8, 2017, country music star and occasional actor Troy Gentry boarded a helicopter for what was supposed to be a routine promotional flight before his evening performance in New Jersey. But moments after takeoff, the aircraft malfunctioned. The pilots attempted an emergency landing, spiraling toward a field behind the venue where Troy was scheduled to perform. When the helicopter came crashing down, rescue workers rushed to the scene and carried Troy to the nearest structure, a backstage trailer, where medics fought to save him. Inside that temporary shelter, surrounded not by cheering fans, but by frantic first responders, Troy Gentry was pronounced dead. Born in 1967, Troy was best known as one half of the award-winning duo Montgomery Gentry. With hits like Something to Be Proud Of, Where I Come From, and My Town, he became an icon of modern country rock, blending rugged vocals with blue-collar storytelling. His presence on stage was electrifying, and behind the scenes, he was known as a loyal friend, devoted husband, and loving father. Troy wasn't just a performer, he was a symbol of everyday American resilience. The tragedy of his death shocked not only the music world, but the entire entertainment industry. Fans who had gathered for what should have been a night of celebration were suddenly confronted with devastation. His bandmate Eddie Montgomery was shattered, later describing Troy as a brother and saying that performing without him felt like singing with half a heart. Tributes poured in from artists across genres, each message carrying the weight of disbelief that such a vibrant life could end so suddenly. The image of Troy's final moments, surrounded not by bright lights but by the sterile walls of a backstage trailer, struck many as unbearably cruel. A man who gave everything to his audience in life was forced to leave the world just steps away from the stage where he planned to sing one last time. What about you, dear viewers? Do you believe some tragedies feel more haunting because they happen so close to a moment of joy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As we leave the chaos of that crashed helicopter and the silent trailer that witnessed Troy Gentry's final breath, we move toward another young performer whose life ended just as suddenly inside an emergency trailer after a devastating accident. This is the story of Nick Lashaway.
Number 13. Nick Lashaway. Ladies and gentlemen, our next tragedy begins on a quiet road in Framingham, Massachusetts. It was May 8, 2016, when 28-year-old actor Nick Lashaway was involved in a devastating three-car collision. Emergency responders arrived quickly, pulling him from the wreckage and transporting him to a temporary emergency trailer that had been set up as a mobile triage unit near the scene. Inside that stark, fluorescent-lit space, so far removed from the roles he once played, Nick spent his final minutes as medics worked desperately to save him. Despite their efforts, he was pronounced dead there in the trailer, leaving behind a rising career and a grief-stricken circle of family, colleagues, and fans. Born in 1988, Nick Lashaway had built a diverse resume across film and television. He appeared in The X-Files, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, and the HBO series Girls, where his performance earned him a lasting impression among viewers who praised his emotional honesty on screen. He had a chameleon-like ability to adapt, one moment charming and comedic, the next brooding and dramatic. Those who worked with him said he was humble, dedicated, and hungry to grow as an artist. He was, by all accounts, just beginning to find his stride. But life has a cruel way of interrupting momentum. On that final evening, just hours before the crash, Nick posted a heartfelt message on social media about faith, redemption, and starting over. When news of his death surfaced, fans were stunned to see the optimism he'd expressed shortly before fate intervened. Lena Dunham, creator of Girls, mourned him publicly, remembering him as a gentle, funny performer who brought genuine depth to the show. Others in the industry echoed her grief, emphasizing how much potential he still carried. The trailer where Nick's life ended became, tragically, the place where a young man's future was suspended forever. A location built for saving lives that instead witnessed the end of one brimming with possibility. What about you, dear viewers? Do you believe it is the promise of a rising star that makes a tragedy feel even heavier? Share your thoughts in the comments. As we step away from the emergency trailer that marked Nick Lashaway's final moments, our next story takes us into the scorching heat of Death Valley, where another performer's life ended under brutal conditions before his body was carried into a rescue trailer. This is the chilling fate of David Legeno. Number 14. David Legeno. Ladies and gentlemen, our next story takes us deep into one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth. In July of 2014, the body of actor David Legeno, best known as the fearsome werewolf Fenrir Greyback in the Harry Potter films, was discovered by hikers in the blistering heat of Death Valley, California. Temperatures had soared above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and Legeno, who had been hiking alone, succumbed to heat-related complications. When rescue teams arrived, they carried his body to the nearest available shelter, a rescue operations trailer positioned in the desert. It was inside that makeshift structure that he was officially pronounced dead, far from any film set, yet intimately tied to the rugged, harsh environments his characters often inhabited. Born in 1963 in London, David Legeno was a man of extraordinary physical presence. Before becoming an actor, he was a professional boxer and mixed martial artist, known for his imposing build and quiet determination. His transition into acting led him to roles in Batman Begins, Snow White and the Huntsman, and of course, the Harry Potter franchise, where his portrayal of Greyback left a lasting impression on millions. He brought intensity to every frame, a raw energy that made him unforgettable even in small scenes. But off-screen, Legeno was known for something entirely different: gentleness. Friends and colleagues described him as humble, soft-spoken, and deeply loyal, a man whose intimidating appearance concealed a thoughtful and generous spirit. He was also an avid hiker, often exploring remote wilderness areas to clear his mind and reconnect with nature. It was during one of those solitary adventures that tragedy struck. When news of his death reached the public, shock spread rapidly. Fans of Harry Potter mourned the loss of a performer who had contributed to one of the most beloved film series in history. Castmates expressed heartbreak, calling him a true gentleman and a warrior with the heart of a poet. Many were saddened not only by his passing, but by the lonely, brutal conditions under which he died. What about you, dear viewers? Do you believe that a passion for solitude can sometimes lead even the strongest souls into danger they never anticipated? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As we step away from the scorching desert and the rescue trailer that marked David Legino's final moments, we now turn toward one last tragedy. Another performer found lifeless inside the trailer he called home, ending a life filled with music, struggle, and quiet suffering. This is the story of Michael Galeotti.
Number 15. Michael Galeotti. Ladies and gentlemen, our final story takes us inside a modest travel trailer sitting quietly in Glendale, California, a far cry from the stages and recording studios where Michael Galeotti once poured out his talent. It was January 11, 2016, when friends, unable to reach him for several days, entered the trailer he lived in and found him unresponsive. The former musician and actor had battled health complications, including high blood pressure, stomach issues, and alcohol-related problems. Though no foul play was suspected, the truth was devastating. He died alone in that small trailer, his body weakened by years of struggle. Born in 1984, Michael Galeotti was best known as the keyboardist for the indie rock band A Nation and for his brief acting stint on the Disney Channel series The Jersey. Yet to many fans, he was known through his marriage to actress Bethany Joy Lenz from One Tree Hill, with whom he shared a daughter. While the public often viewed him through the lens of celebrity association, those who knew him personally saw something more: a gentle, creative soul wrestling with internal battles he could never fully escape. As his music career shifted and personal challenges mounted, Michael withdrew from the entertainment world. The trailer he moved into became a place of solitude, a shelter where he could distance himself from pressures he no longer wished to face. But isolation can be a double-edged sword. In the days leading up to his death, Michael had reportedly visited a hospital for severe stomach pains but left against medical advice. That decision, whether born of fear, frustration, or exhaustion, became a tragic turning point. When news of his passing broke, fans across the One Tree Hill community were heartbroken. Many remembered seeing him during the early years of the show, smiling alongside his wife at events, seemingly content. His death felt like the tragic collapse of a life once filled with promise. Bethany Joy Lenz remained private in her grief, focusing on the well-being of their daughter, while fans shared condolences and reflected on how silent battles can hide beneath even the warmest smiles. What about you, dear viewers? Do you believe loneliness and declining health can quietly erode a person long before the world notices? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And now, as we step away from Michael Galeotti's dimly lit trailer, the final stop in our journey through these 15 tragic stories, we prepare to close this chapter. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have walked through 15 stories marked by silence, isolation, and the stark contrast between fame and the fragile human lives behind it. These actors, musicians, and performers spent their final moments not on grand stages or beneath bright lights, but inside small trailers, temporary spaces that became the last chapters of their lives. Though each story is unique, they all remind us that even the brightest stars can fade in quiet, unexpected places. But their legacies endure. Their performances still move us, their voices still echo through our memories, and their stories continue to shape the way we understand the price of fame.
Gone but iconic, each of them left something behind that time cannot erase. Do you remember any other moments we haven't mentioned today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you would like to honor more forgotten stars, don't forget to subscribe to Gone but Iconic.